Jace here. Today is Monday, the 14th. It's been a busy weekend. Everybody's in an uproar because Kamala's lost ground. They think she's losing the race, all that. Like the title suggests, I'm giving you guys a quick little 14-minute rundown of what some of the more popular right-wing media outlets are saying, what they're talking about today, just in case any of you actually have lives and aren't sitting around watching the news all day. So I hope you enjoy, and God bless.
About a month ago, Kamala Harris was leading by 5 percentage points in the NBC News national poll. Today, they are dead tied, 48-48. That is a 5-point shift in favor of President Trump since just 1 month ago. So what exactly happened here? Was it that Donald Trump suddenly started overperforming? Did he radically change his campaign? The answer there, of course, is no. Donald Trump is perfectly consistent. He's been campaigning in the same fashion today that he was like 10 years ago at this point. So what exactly changed? The answer is the brat wore off. The air is out of the balloon. The facade is crumbling in Kamala Harris land. According to that NBC poll, the impression of candidates, Trump, 43% positive, negative 51%. Harris, positive 43%, same exact number as Donald Trump, negative 49%. That is a dramatic shift. Last month, Trump was at 40% positive, and Harris was at 48% positive and 45% negative. So it's a 5-point drop in her favorables since just last month. Biden's job approval rating, by the way, 43%. Trump's retrospective job approval rating, I mean, what do people think of his first presidency? 48%, which is higher than any poll when he was actually president of the United States. When it comes to policies, Biden policies, impact on your family, helping 25%, hurting 45%. Trump policies, impact on your family, helped 44%, hurt 31%. How about that gender gap? Well, according to the brand new NBC News poll, men are breaking 56-40 for Donald Trump. I think that's an underestimate, by the way. Women are breaking 55-41 for Kamala Harris, which, by the way, is not nearly as much of a gender gap as Democrats, I think, are expecting from women. They're hoping for a 60-40 break, not a 55-41 break. That looks very much in line with what Joe Biden did in 2020, or what Hillary Clinton, for that matter, did in 2016. These poll numbers are quite bad for Kamala Harris, and you can see that the panic is beginning to set in.
Hey guys, I'm going to interrupt this clip. I have a plea for all of you. I know it's looking better for Trump, and that's great. For whatever for whatever you can believe in the polls, but don't get complacent. Don't stop encouraging people to get out there and vote. Over the next 3 weeks, Kamala's lack of or her backslide is not lost on the party, on the media, on the liberal elite. They see it too, and they're going to react. You're going to see so much misinformation over the next 3 weeks, so many lies. They're going to start working overtime for Kamala. And I would ask you guys, please make sure on YouTube. I really thought about it over the weekend. I started looking. I was going through my history because, I'm going to conservative channels every day, all day, for content, for inspiration, for whatever. I'm constantly on conservative channels. I started thinking about it. They're not showing up on my recommended. I watch them all the time. They're not showing up on my recommended. So I started looking through the history, visiting those channels, and I realized how many of them I had never subscribed to. I never turned the notifications on, obviously, because I didn't think about it. They were always showing up in my recommended because I watched them so much. Well, they're not there anymore. They're not showing up. Facebook, YouTube, all the liberal elites, they're changing the algorithm so that the voices that you want to hear are not showing up for you. So please make sure if there's a channel that you really enjoy, make sure you go subscribe to it. Make sure you go turn those notifications on, because otherwise, I don't think YouTube's going to allow it to show up.
He's not being transparent with the voters. He's not being transparent. So check this out. He refuses to release his medical records. I've done it. He is unwilling to do a 60 Minutes interview. He is unwilling to a second debate. It makes you wonder, why does his staff want him to hide away? Are they afraid that people will see that he is too weak and unstable to lead America?
Yeah, NBC's data guru boils the Kamala polling crash down to a simple premise: who is helping you and who is hurting you?
We asked about President Biden's policies. Are they helping or hurting your family? Just a quarter of voters said they're helping. Nearly half said they're hurting. And then here's the interesting twist. We also asked folks, think back to when Donald Trump was president. Did his policies help or hurt your family? And look at the difference. 44% helping, 31 hurting. Trump's, the retrospective, you would say, opinion of Trump's presidency among voters, arguably higher now than when he was president.
This report suggests there is a growing rift between President Biden and Vice President Harris and each of their staffs as we're just 3 weeks out from Election Day.
Yep, senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich joins us with the latest. Jackie.
Good morning, guys. Axios reports things are frosty between the VP's campaign team and the White House just before the run-up to the election, and, quote, some on the Harris team say that top White House aides aren't sufficiently coordinating Biden's messaging and his schedule to campaign with what's best for the vice president's campaign. They highlighted a few times the president's impromptu remarks conflicted with an event that Harris was doing, upending the media coverage that Harris would then receive, like when Biden twice gave impromptu remarks in the hurricane, just when Harris was about to speak from the campaign trail. These campaign sources go on to accuse the White House of lacking someone in the room to think first and foremost about how things would affect the campaign. However, I've been talking about these same things with folks from the White House. They've been increasingly frustrated that Harris's campaign keeps putting the president in a tough spot, like when she publicly picked a fight with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over not taking her calls. I spoke with 3 sources in the president's orbit about all that. They agreed it was a dumb thing for Harris to do.
But increasingly, it's becoming apparent that nobody in the Kamala Harris campaign has ever spoken to a man who is normal and well-adjusted. That's the only explanation for why the campaign voluntarily uploaded this footage of Tim Walz going pheasant hunting the other day. They must have thought this would be a slam dunk. After all, Walz was bringing his own gun to go for the hunt. So presumably his handlers assumed that he would know how to load it for the cameras. But that assumption turned out to be very incorrect. Watch.
That's my theory. And it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. It is not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
So it kind of looks like it's his first time ever handling a firearm of any kind. It definitely does not look like a guy who's familiar in any way with the firearms that he supposedly owns. As Larry Taunton put it, it looks like Tim Walz stepped out of an LL Bean catalog, eager to impress everybody with his hunting prowess, and everybody can see through it in about 10 seconds.
Campaign. Right, but he thinks he was going to run on his record and win. Remember, he spent all last summer doing what? Selling Bidenomics. He spent $40 million, and the numbers didn't move. But instead of, wow, you know what? We got to sober up and understand maybe what's going on here. Let's look at the numbers. And he didn't. He just was doubled down and got angrier that people weren't realizing how good he was doing.
That's right. I mean, look, you're going to double down on inflation. People see inflation when they go to the grocery store. You're going to double down on these high interest rates, the unaffordability of housing. You're going to double down on all that. He's tried it. It didn't work. If I were Kamala Harris, I would have made a clean break as much as you can because she voted for the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan, all of these things that caused inflation. I would have made a clean break and say, this is how I differ from Joe Biden on the economy. But she can't do that. So you've got to put all these points together. He says, we're seeing voter registration, Republicans with a 1-point advantage. Unheard of, Republicans have it. Then you add that to the polling that came out yesterday, where Trump gained 5 points nationally in the NBC poll, now tied with Harris nationally. You add that to him making gains in the ABC poll and the CBS poll, all of that out yesterday. And then you add that to the posture of the press and the fact that you have Democrats in panic mode, backgrounding to reporters how worried they are, how bad the internal polls are, all of that together would make me feel very good today if I'm Donald J. Trump. Anything can happen, but today I'd be feeling pretty good.
That she can go on the Call Me Daddy podcast, Howard Stern, The View. She can go on Stephen Colbert, Crack a Beer, 60 Minutes, ask one tough question, but then they edit two separate answers for one question. And is this what we call journalism in America? Vivek Ramaswamy is with us. I'm glad we got you back, number one. Number two, you know, you've always been really hyper-focused on Republicans' need to lay out a better vision. I think at this point it's more than that. I think Republicans, yeah, absolutely, they've got to lay out their economic vision, their vision for the absolute insanity at our border, how we're going to deal with foreign adversaries, how we're going to deal with energy prices and inflation, all of that. And however, I want answers from Kamala Harris. They don't seem to be forthcoming. And maybe I'm dreaming, maybe it's a fantasy, maybe I'm in a surreal world. I would think that the media would demand those answers that they're not demanding. Why am I that naive, having done this for so long?
Well, I wouldn't call you naive, Sean, but I would say I look at it a little bit differently. I don't see us as running against Kamala Harris here, actually. Just like we weren't actually running against Joe Biden. We're not running against a candidate. We are up against a machine. And what we need to do is to get in there and dismantle that machine. You know, you're seeing the same thing with Tim Walz, who's now the vice presidential candidate. I will say that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, by the way, share one thing in common, Sean. They both got their jobs as vice president because of their race and gender. So if the Democrats learn one thing out of the defeat that's coming for them, let it be that identity politics never works for hiring.
We just showed that latest New York Times poll. It shows Kamala Harris up by 3 points, and it also shows that 3% of people don't know or refuse to answer. So essentially, it's a jump ball. Does what you're seeing on your screen right now match your internal polling? And also, what will the closing message be today?
So we released internal polling last week that shows us leading in Pennsylvania, and many other public polls have that as well. It's a tight race. Yeah. The road back to the White House leads right through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. President Trump knows that. That's why he's going there today. He spent significant time there. He loves the people of this state. They've been hurting because of Kamala Harris's policies. Inflation is up. Fentanyl crisis is up. Drug overdoses are up. Crime is up in the Keystone State. Kamala Harris wants to ban fracking. Day one, she will implement that long-awaited, long-promised ban of hers. President Trump will protect those fracking jobs, bring law and order back to Pennsylvania. It's a winning message. He brings it back to that state. Every single week he'll be there between now and Election Day.
And when you think about a state like Pennsylvania, I mean, the union vote does come to mind. There are two unions that have not endorsed either candidate, which seems like it could be a win for the Trump campaign. And also the Border Patrol union yesterday endorsed Donald Trump.
Yeah, the Border Patrol union endorsing President Trump at his rally in Arizona last night. A huge endorsement. Obviously, Kamala Harris has allowed the worst border invasion in our nation's history. And the brave men and women of the Border Patrol are on the front lines of this war at our southern border every single day. President Trump will protect them. He will give them wages. He will hire more agents to help them in their duty to protect the homeland. Kamala Harris has failed completely on that front.
Okay, so